I was jealous of her. Just once, just for a moment. And I have never said that out loud until now. Not of the ring, not of Monaco, not of any of it. Of something much smaller than all of that. Something I watched her do without thinking, in a corridor with no cameras, 15 minutes before everything changed. Hollywood. March 21st, 1956. The RKO Pantages Theater. Backstage at the 28th Academy Awards. The corridors here are narrow and purposeful. Overhead lights too flat and too honest. Stage managers with clipboards. Makeup artists standing in doorways with the calm of people who have done this 100 times. Nobody performs back here. The performance is on the other side of the curtain, where 2,000 people sit in the dark, waiting to see who the industry has decided to honor. Back here, it is just work. Just the machinery of a ceremony that looks effortless from the front. Neither Grace nor I is nominated tonight. We were both here as presenters only. Grace had won Best Actress the year before for The Country Girl. My own Oscar had come the year before that. Roman Holiday, 1954. So we were returning not as competitors, but as two women who had already won the same prize in consecutive years and were now here to give it to someone else. Grace was presenting Best Actor to Ernest Borgnine for Marty. I was presenting Best Picture for the same film. Two women, one corridor, 15 minutes of waiting. In her dressing room, Grace sat at a mirror framed by bare bulbs. White strapless gown, blue-gray eyes that catch light the way still water does, without trying, without seeming to notice. A face that photographers had spent years trying to describe, and always, somehow, failing to capture completely. And on her left hand, a ring. Cartier, emerald cut. Prince Rainier III of Monaco had placed it on her finger 3 months ago. In 5 weeks, she would board a ship called the SS Constitution and sail to Monaco. She would leave behind her apartment in Manhattan. The smell of a film set at 6 in the morning. That particular smell of coffee and cables and possibility. Of a day that exists only as potential before the cameras roll. The craft. The discipline of it. The thing she was, underneath everything else she was. She would never act in a film again. She had not fully understood this yet. The not understanding was still months and years away from becoming unavoidable, from settling into the particular permanence of a door closed long enough to forget what was on the other side. Tonight, she was simply a woman at a mirror, in a dress, waiting for her cue. Composed, complete, entirely herself. 12 feet down the corridor, I was sitting at another mirror. Pale ivory silk. Givenchy. Our collaboration had begun 3 years before with Sabrina, when I telephoned his Paris atelier and asked, very politely, whether he might help. He agreed. He has not stopped agreeing since. I had a small card in my hand with the winner's name written in blue ink. I knew what I would say when I walked out. I had rehearsed the words until they felt natural. I was good at making things feel natural. That was precisely the problem. She looked at her reflection for exactly 3 seconds. No adjustment, no correction. She looked and looked away as if the mirror had confirmed nothing she did not already know. As if her face were simply a fact, settled, finished, requiring nothing further. I looked at mine for 11 seconds. I counted. I do not know why I counted. I always count. It is the habit of someone who learned very early that the difference between almost right and right is always worth the extra seconds. I learned this in Arnhem in the winter of 1944 When I was 15 and the wrong expression on the wrong face at the wrong moment could end things, I have been counting ever since. She touched the ring, one hand rising to her left hand, without her eyes moving, without her expression changing, without any part of her deciding to do it. A gesture so habitual it had become invisible to her. Her fingers found the ring the way they would find anything that had become entirely hers. Without looking, without thinking, without knowing. I straightened a seam that did not need straightening. We were both ready. We had arrived at exactly the same place, by entirely different roads. This is what I watched in that corridor. Not her beauty, not the composure that photographers spent years trying to describe and always somehow falling slightly short of. Something smaller than all of that, though without knowing. That one unguarded gesture. A hand finding a ring it did not need to look for. That was the moment. That was when something in me went very quiet, not because it made me less, because it made me understand, for the first time with complete clarity, what I had been spending my entire life building, and that the building would never stop, that there would be no morning I would wake up and find it finished. No mirror I would look into for 3 seconds and look away. No corridor I would walk into and simply be there without the choosing, without the small, invisible act of management that precedes every room I have ever entered. I will always count to 11. I understood that tonight. Standing in a narrow corridor with overhead lights too flat for glamour and too honest for anything but the truth, holding a small card with a winner's name written in blue ink, watching Grace Kelly touch a ring she did not know she was touching, watching a woman be entirely, effortlessly, unconsciously herself. I have worked my entire life toward exactly that. And in one unguarded second, watching her, I understood that work and arrival are not the same thing. That I can spend every morning for the rest of my life crossing a gap that Grace Kelly has never needed to know existed. I was jealous of that, just once, just for a moment. Then I put it away. That is also something I have learned to do. The putting away. Alfred Hitchcock once called Grace Kelly a snow-covered volcano. He meant it as a compliment, the cold exterior concealing unexpected interior heat. He was describing what the camera found in her across 3 films: Dial M for Murder, Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, 3 different women, the same quality running beneath all of them. He was right about what the camera found. But what I found in that corridor was something different. Not a volcano under snow. Something more settled than that. Something that had never needed to be contained because it had never threatened to overflow. Grace's composure came from her father's house. Jack Kelly, Philadelphia millionaire, Olympic gold medalist, a man who built himself from nothing and wore that construction like a second skeleton. He had one view of life: nothing comes without earning it. Grace absorbed this completely. She grew into the structure of it so thoroughly that the structure became invisible. It ceased to feel like something built and became simply the shape of her. She did not choose stillness every morning. She simply was still. I watched her in that corridor, and I saw a woman who had never needed to learn the thing I have been learning my entire life. A woman for whom the inside and the outside were not 2 different territories requiring careful navigation, but simply the same place. She existed in herself the way some people exist in a room they have lived in for years, without looking for the light switch, without checking where the furniture is, without thinking about any of it at all. I have never lived in myself that way. My father left when I was 6. That is the fact I always return to when I'm trying to understand what I'm made of. Not the war, though the war is also part of it. Not the hunger, though I know what hunger does to a body and does not entirely stop doing. The departure is what shaped me first. The specific lesson of a child who learns that the people who are supposed to stay sometimes do not, and who decides, somewhere below the level of conscious thought, that she will become someone worth staying for. That decision has driven everything since. The work, the discipline, the daily choosing of what to show, the counting to 11. Grace never made that decision. She never needed to. Nobody left. The floor never gave way beneath her. The structure of her childhood held, and she grew into it, and it became her, and she has carried it ever since without ever needing to examine what it is made of, or whether it will hold. You do not learn to build until something falls. I have been building since I was 6 years old, and I have never once stopped. Not between films, not between cities, not in the quiet of a dressing room at the Academy Awards, with a card in my hand and a winner's name in blue ink and 12 feet of corridor between me and a woman who has never needed to build anything at all. The building is invisible by now. That is perhaps the strangest part. From the outside, it looks exactly like what Grace has. The ease, the composure, the quality that photographers call elegance and audiences call grace, and nobody ever quite manages to describe completely. From the outside, we look the same. 2 women in white gowns, waiting in a corridor, entirely composed. Only I know what tonight cost. Only I know what every night costs. And only I know that tomorrow morning I will begin again. Control is not silence. It is not the absence of feeling. It is not the performance of calm over the surface of something broken. It is not what you build to keep things out. It is this: feeling everything completely, always, and still choosing what to do next. Grace does not choose. She simply is. I choose. Every morning, every room, every mirror. I was born with an enormous need for affection. I have said this in interviews enough times that it has become a kind of public fact about me. Something people receive and file away as charming, but the truth of it is not charming. The truth is that this need has been the engine of everything I have ever done, and the source of most of what has been difficult. It makes every room feel important, every person feel significant, every goodbye feel like a question about whether they will come back. I have learned to live with this need without being ruled by it, to feel it completely and act on it deliberately, to be warm without being desperate, to need connection without requiring it from whoever happens to be standing nearest. This is what I mean when I say control, not the suppression of feeling, the architecture of it, the careful daily construction of a self that can hold everything it feels and still move forward. It costs something every day. It costs something. But here is what I have never said clearly before, and what I want to record tonight while the understanding is still fresh. The cost is also the gift, because what I built from necessity, I now own completely. I know every stone of it. I know where it is strong and where it requires attention. I know what I am made of because I have had to know, because the floor gave way early and I had to understand what would hold. Grace does not know her floor that way. She has never needed to press on it, never needed to discover what holds and what gives. The structure of her was built before she arrived, and she has lived in it all her life without ever needing to examine the foundations. This is not a weakness. I want to be clear about that. It is simply a different kind of life, producing a different kind of knowledge. She has the composure. I have the knowledge of what composure costs. From the outside, in a photograph, in a corridor, in a caption in a magazine, they look identical. That is the whole point of the work. The work is supposed to be invisible. The morning maintenance, the choosing, the daily and unglamorous act of deciding what to carry forward and what to set down. None of this is supposed to show. And it does not show. I have made certain of that, but I know it is there. I feel the weight of it, the way you feel the weight of something carried long enough that the carrying has become invisible even to you, until a quiet moment in a narrow corridor, when you watch someone else move through the world without carrying anything at all, and you remember that the weight exists, that you chose it, that you would choose it again. Only one of us knows otherwise. And only one of us will go home tonight and sit with that knowledge in the particular quiet of a hotel room and write it down. Because writing is also how I carry things, how I hold them still long enough to understand them, before I put them away and go back to the work of being exactly who I have decided to be. Alan Grant was moving around us with his camera. He worked for Life magazine. He was the kind of photographer who understood that the most revealing images arrive in the moment the subject forgets they are being seen. He moved quietly, said almost nothing, waited for the forgetting. The photograph he took that evening became one of the most recognized images of that decade. 2 women in white gowns, backstage, waiting. The caption read, "The 2 most elegant stars of their era." I have thought about that caption many times since. Turned it over. Tried to decide whether it bothers me or simply interests me. I have concluded that it does both, for the same reason. It is accurate. We were both, in 1956, known for a quality the word elegant attempts to describe. The composure, the stillness, the particular way of being in a public space without imposing on it. The camera found this in both of us, and audiences responded, and the word became attached to our names the way words do when repeated long enough to stop being examined. But the caption treats elegance as a single thing. One quality, 2 women, same result, same source, same road. As if the word contained the whole truth of what it was pointing at. As if standing in a corridor looking composed were the same thing regardless of what it cost to get there. As if the photograph captured anything beyond the surface of the moment. The white gowns, the overhead light, the 2 faces equally still, equally present, equally whatever it is that cameras have always found in both of us. What Grant's camera could not reach, what no camera has ever reached, in my experience, is the interior of what it is photographing. The road taken to arrive at the visible result, the daily work of it, the years of practice that made the crossing invisible, the girl in Arnhem counting seconds at a mirror, the woman in every dressing room since doing the same. One of us in that photograph is resting in something she was given. One of us is maintaining something she built. From the outside, there's no way to know which is which. I have spent my entire career ensuring that. I suppose that is the point, finally. The whole point. Composure is not about feeling nothing. It is about making the work invisible. Standing in a corridor or on a stage or in the pages of a magazine and giving nothing away about the road that brought you there. I am very good at this. The photograph proves it. And the photograph misses everything. I went out on stage and presented Best Picture. Said the right words in the right order, with the right amount of warmth, the right pause before the envelope, the right expression when the winner's name was read. Smiled, genuinely, because I have never been able to smile falsely in a room full of people. My face will not cooperate with that particular deception. The warmth is real. The composure is real. Everything visible is real. The audience responded warmly, as audiences do when they are given something genuine, even if they cannot name what makes it genuine. It looked, to everyone watching, entirely effortless. Grace presented Best Actor to Ernest Borgnine, who came up looking genuinely surprised, in the way people do when they have convinced themselves they will not win and then do. She was precise and warm and complete. She walked off the stage cleanly. The way a person walks off something they finished internally long before the external moment arrived to confirm it. Then we were in the corridor again. Same lights, same smell of grease paint and warm electricity. Grant raised his camera one more time. We stood together, and he photographed us, and the caption would call us the two most elegant stars of their era, and that caption would be accurate, and that caption would miss everything. I looked at Grace in the moment before the flashbulb. She was still, not managing anything, not crossing anything, not choosing, simply there, completely, entirely, without effort. And I felt it one final time, very quietly, not jealousy anymore. Something that had moved in the space of 15 minutes into something more like understanding, the recognition of a road not taken, not because I chose against it, but because it was never offered. My road was different from the beginning. It required different equipment. It cost different things, and it brought me here. I do not regret it. I want to record that clearly, because this diary should be honest. I would not trade what I know for what I did not have to learn. There is a kind of knowledge that only becomes available after fracture, after the winters with no food, and the fathers who do not stay, and the dreams that end before you are old enough to replace them, after you have had to put yourself back together and discovered, in the doing of it, exactly what holds. I know what holds. Grace may not need to know. The floor has never given way beneath her. You do not learn what supports you until something stops supporting. I have been supported by things I built myself. That is not nothing. That is, in the end, everything. Some women carry composure as a birthright. I carry mine as a practice. The destination looks the same from the outside. The journey was entirely different. Every week, one moment from Audrey Hepburn's life. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.